order the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville for Tuesday, February 25th, 2014, and we will start with roll call.
Patrice Steiner.
Here.
Mike Den.
Here.
Barbara Doss.
Here.
Barb Stockhausen.
Here.
Dick Bonin.
Here.
Ken Killian.
Here.
Eileen Nichols.
Here. First item is consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature or previous discussion. Please indicate to the council president if you would prefer separate discussion and action. A is minutes of the February 11th, 2014 regular council meeting. B is payment of bills. C, appointments to boards and commissions. And this evening, I am appointing Lauren Fuhrer to the Community Development Board and Hap Dawes to the Parks and Recreation Committee. D is licenses. A request to extend the liquor license premises to the parking lot on March 8th from 11 a.m. to midnight for Nick's at 74.5 North 2nd Street. There was a memo in our packet regarding that from the licensing committee. Also, 1 and/or 2-year operator's licenses also included in the packet. E is permits, the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, a walk on April 27th, and the American Cancer Society Relay for Life would like to put up a banner from April 14th through the 28th. Is there a motion?
I'd like to ask that item A, the minutes, be removed for separate discussion.
All right. So your motion is to,
Motion to, did you move then the rest of the items? I moved items B, C, D, and E. Payment of bills, appointments, licenses, and permits.
Second.
all right, we have a motion to accept items B, C, D, and E, and we'll vote.
Steiner.
Yes.
Den.
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Stockhausen.
Yes.
Bonin.
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Your question.
Okay, yeah, I have a correction to the minutes from the last meeting under the information items. Number B, council meeting information due dates. It says, the first line, Steiner said that she feels rushed to set the agenda. That is not accurate. What I said, as I recall, I felt that giving the staff an extra day to prepare the packets would be helpful to city staff, and they would not feel so rushed. Therefore, my proposal was that the packets be delivered on Thursday afternoon rather than Wednesday afternoon. That is my correction.
All right, you want to make a motion with that correction?
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes with the change, although we'll vote.
Steiner.
Yes.
Den.
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Stockhausen.
Yes.
Bonin.
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Before we do the citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, city manager would like to make an introduction.
This evening, I'd like to ask Fire Chief Ryan Simmons to come up front. Mr. Simmons has been with the fire department in Platteville since 2001 for the last 13 years. He has served as assistant chief for 4 years, and recently the fire department personnel he was recently elected by the fire department personnel and appointed by the Police and Fire Commission to serve as our new fire chief. With that, Mr. Simmons, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Ryan Simmons. I think I know several of the council members here tonight. I don't think I know everybody, but I think I know or met most of you. I guess as far as where we're at tonight, we're just going to continue to move forward as we have in the past, striving to protect the citizens of our community and keep moving forward with, the changing ways of everything in the 21st century of fighting fires, from building construction to safety and everything else. So, I'm hoping that at some time we'll have the opportunity that we can sit down with the council members and kind of all see the vision of where we feel the fire department needs to go and where the support we need from you guys is. So,
Any questions?
No, welcome.
Yeah,
right.
welcome.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank
all
you.
right, thanks.
Next is citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, and I have what I believe are two under that category. One is Bill Richard to speak in favor of a community center.
Good evening, everybody.
Would you give your name and your address?
My name is Bill Richard, 30972 County XX, Platteville.
Okay.
I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the step forward that the city of Platteville has done in the past, and I'm just going to put a couple examples. You know, other than the Packers going to St. Norbert's to play football, the Bears came to Platteville. That was a first. We had our hometown parade right here for Mickey Mouse. You know, just a couple of examples where Platteville likes to lead from the front. And if we had a community center in town that catered to all ages, in other words, someplace that would facilitate possibly a daycare center, certified daycare center, facility for people to get meals, an indoor playground, especially this year, for the kids, and they'd be supervised by a certified daycare. Also within that same facility, a place for parents to come and just sit back, watch their kids play, and enjoy conversation with other people. Also, we could conclude in this for young adults, teens, a place to shoot some pool, play some pinball, whatever. The old-fashioned games that most of us grew up with. But last but not least, the seniors. I invite every one of you to go down to McDonald's when the seniors are sitting down there having coffee, and a young parent walks in with a little child. 99% of those seniors will turn around and look at that little one, smile, grin, and I don't know what it does, but I'm almost a senior too, and we raised 3 children that are 13, 9, and 8, and there's something about them. They just put some energy back in my life, and I see that with the seniors all the time when they go out and there's kids involved in their life. I've taken this a little further than most people have at this point. This has been a thought in the back of my mind for the last 10, 15 years. In fact, when the bakery moved out, if I'd had the money, I'd have bought that building and done just the thing. But time brings everything together. I've had the opportunity to talk to the superintendent of schools. And when I explain this to her, she very nonchalantly says, "It sounds like O.E. Gray School to me." And the envisions in my mind with what I've got decided to do with this can do nothing but make the Platteville community grow. I know there's other communities looking at a senior center. Cuba City is one. You know, if people come into town to work in Platteville, they're going to say, well, we could live in Cuba City. They got a community center for our kids to play in, our grandparents, whatever. But your tax dollars are going to be in Cuba City, not in Platteville. And the growth process that's going on in Platteville could just help grow the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Historic Expo, Arlene says.
Good evening, Arlene Sis, 130 North Hickory Street, and tonight I'm representing the Historic Preservation Commission, and we are having one of our wonderful events coming up on March 7th and 8th. And our first thing that we're going to be doing that is on the 7th of, which is a Friday. We are going to have a fabulous dinner, and that will be over at the Trinity Episcopal Church. It's going to be fantastic. The meal was there last year, and oh boy, was it good. Nobody wanted, everybody felt too full to be able to leave because they had so much good things going into them. And then we're going to have a speaker afterwards, which is Kent Sherrill. And if anybody has children that went to school here in Platteville, their child probably had Kent as their teacher. Fabulous person, and he has the best sense of humor, and he's going to talk about the history of Platteville and some of its kind of curious and funny things, and also the all of Grant County. Then on Saturday, we're going to have our expo, which will be here in this room. As you know, we've used this room several times, and we have a variety of speakers that are coming from 9 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they are experts, and they will give lots and lots of information, and people can approach them. And then we're going to have vendors right here in this building, right here in this room, I should say, to aware people as to things that are available and the expertise that they have in doing a variety of things. And then finally, we're going to have an after-hours event, and I'm pretty excited about this because it is going to be at the Badger Bar, and we are going to have one of the people who wrote the book Bars in Wisconsin. I'm sure all of you have read it or heard about it, and one of those authors are going to be here and to speak and to talk about not only the Badger Bar but other bars here in southwest Wisconsin. And then along with that, Diane is going to talk about her own history of Badger Bar, and there's a lot of history, and it's pretty. I think Platteville was a pretty wild place at one time. Let me just put it that way. But it's going to be a wonderful weekend. What do you call it? The after hours does not cost anything for anybody to go. Anybody can go. On all day Saturday, it doesn't cost anybody to attend. It's free. The only thing is the dinner. And the dinner, it's a small amount. It's $15 for a person, $20 at the door, and all that money goes back to help pay for the expenses, the advertising and that type of thing. There will be advertising coming out at the beginning of next week that'll give everybody information as to who the speakers are when they're speaking and who the vendors are. So I think it's going to be one heck of a weekend. So I would encourage all of you to come. I do have tickets, so I will be seeing you. And anyway, but it is limited to the number of people who can be at the dinner because of the space, but the food is fabulous. Questions?
Thank you.
No? Thank you.
Under reports,
I'm sorry.
oh, there are committee reports. The first is Airport Commission. I have nothing to add. Community Safe Routes Committee, Steiner.
There are two items, though they will come up later on in the agenda.
Historic Preservation Commission, Killian.
No addition,
Water and Sewer Commission, Killian, Steiner, and Bonin.
no addition.
Nothing.
All right. Other reports included in the packet are the Building Inspector Report and Department Progress Reports. Any questions on those reports?
Is there, the city attorney is not here. What was the reason for dismissing that particular citation? You know, Joe?
That was
It's been
the,
on our, in our packet a number of times. I thought,
yeah, I believe the judge dismissed that one because there were multiple citations. He found him guilty on some and dismissed.
oh,
one of
okay.
them.
Any other questions?
I do have a question for Luke Peters. Luke, you have in your progress report that your major objective for the coming month is to transport shelving from theater to external storage facilities. What shelving is that?
There was just some leftover shelving when we cleaned out the storage facilities at the, we used to use the upper balcony of the theater for some storage, and the shelving in there can be moved And it's as soon as I can get into more of the Dairy Days area, which is currently snowed in, I intend to move the shelves from there to that, just to repurpose those.
Okay, what, are they wooden shelves or what are they?
I believe there's some wooden and some metal shelves, yes.
Okay, because the Platteville Community Theater did talk about moving some of their items down to the basement in this building. I don't know if that's
Not the same.
not, I'm sorry, what?
The shelves are in were in the projection booth.
Oh,
These were ones that were housing a lot of recreation equipment previously, and I moved all that equipment, one of the first things when I got here, to external facilities. And while doing that, took an inventory of things and also took note that we could use shelving in some of our external buildings that are at the parks. So it's been on my agenda for quite some time. The weather has kind of honestly pushed that back for me.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, then we'll go on to the first action item, which is a sidewalk waiver for Culver's Restaurant. Joe and Howard, I believe.
Yeah, I'll start that. With the redevelopment of the Culver's Restaurant, there's a provision in the zoning ordinance that says, basically when you have a new commercial building, if there's no sidewalk, public sidewalk currently present along the frontage of that street, then as part of that redevelopment, they would have to install it. But the ordinance also says that a waiver to that requirement can be waived, basically by the council. You can waive that requirement if there is a situation where you feel it's not necessary, there's no connecting sidewalks present, or they won't really serve the purpose. So they have requested such a waiver. This request has gone before the Safe Routes Committee. They've reviewed it at a couple different meetings, and they have recommended that the council approve the sidewalk waiver with conditions. The condition being that the developer grades the land to allow for the future installation of sidewalk along the frontage of the property, and the cost of installation of the sidewalk in the future will be the property owner's expense. That's the same condition that was placed on the waiver when the Dunkin' Donuts project, when that was constructed. So it's being consistent with that previous motion. So staff would also agree with that recommendation. If you have any questions, I wasn't at this last meeting. If you got any detailed questions about that meeting, Howard can fill you in. Otherwise, Bruce Kroll from Culver's is here if you have any specific questions about that particular development. Any questions?
I had heard that the stormwater management system had been redesigned so that it would not utilize part of this area.
That's correct. Mr. Kroll's engineer had worked with the DNR, and they determined a different method of stormwater management, and they were able to do it completely within their property boundaries, and it will not impact the sidewalk or future development in the right-of-way.
So there is no issue then with treating this just like we treated the Dunkin', that property on the corner where Dunkin' Donuts is. I mean, it wouldn't, there would be no infringement or no conflict between stormwater management and a reserved area for sidewalk should it become necessary.
That's correct.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept this resolution, or make a resolution, and we accept the sidewalk waiver with the conditions.
As proposed by the
The
Walks.
conditions that are right here, as proposed, yeah.
so that they reserve the space and would have to put the sidewalks in at their
Those
own
are the
cost if it
conditions.
was ever.
We do have one citizen who's asked to speak on it, so.
Oh, okay.
If we could have that, and then we'll go back to your motion, if that's all right.
Sure.
Mike Penn?
Hello, I'm Mike Penn from 220 Ellen, and I apologize because I was not familiar with the conditions. I was only familiar with the fact of the waiver. So I'm happy about the conditions to have the sidewalk in place for future placement as a nearby resident and walker. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now back to your motion, Mike.
Okay.
I still have a question.
Oh, sure, go
Is there
ahead.
gonna be a break in this, lot line between the Heiser strip mall into that property? Because right now it's very difficult to walk, or used to be to walk over between the rocks. Is that gonna have like a space that has some kind of a walk area in there? Because we have a lot of people right now, students, children, that walk between all those properties.
I'm Bruce Kroll with Culvers. Right now, there is not anything in the plans. Mostly because where those rocks are, actually, that's Tom Heiser's property. I mean, and then our parking lot's gonna butt right next to those rocks. As far as putting in a walkway, I mean, it's something that we could consider, but it's definitely not in the plans at this point in time.
I didn't realize that was his property.
Yeah. And I'm sure he'd be willing to work with us too.
I may ask him. Well, I've just seen the kids go into the road to come around to go in there. And we're trying to be safer.
Right.
So that was my thought.
Okay. Anything else while I'm up here?
Thank you, Bruce.
Good.
Sorry, Mike.
That's fine. Good question. Good question.
All right.
Okay. Make a motion that we accept the resolution for the sidewalk waivers with all the conditions that were implemented into our information.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for the sidewalk waiver for Culver's Restaurant, and we'll vote.
Steiner?
I still got a question.
Oh, all right.
Why do we have to accept the waiver now when he's got his stormwater program changed?
Because it's a waiver that, right now, they don't need the sidewalks at this point in time. Somewhere down the road, if, from what I understand.
Excuse me, Mike, the waiver was for the sidewalk because we had to have the ravine in there for the runoff. But now they've changed their drainage program, so that's not an issue.
What we're talking about here is so they don't have to put the sidewalks in at this point in time, correct?
But that's not what this is.
This is a waiver for, they're talking about this time, is that correct? And down the road, if they do put sidewalks in, if they're required on that side of the street, I understand Mr. Kroll says, fine, they'll have the area ready for it, and they will do that. So
This waiver is wrote up with the intentions of before what he told us tonight.
I think we need to have Joe clarify
please do, Joe.
the waiver, Dick.
The ordinance says that a sidewalk has to be installed as part of this redevelopment. The council can grant a waiver to that to say that he does not have to install a sidewalk at this time. And that's what the Safe Routes recommendation is do not install a sidewalk at this time, grade it, the land, to allow for the future installation of sidewalk at the owner's expense, basically when there's sidewalk to connect to.
All right, go on.
We have a motion and a second. We're for the vote, correct?
Well, I just want to make sure that everybody understands it. So this basically is the same condition that we placed on the area where Dunkin' Donuts is now, Dick, where they don't have to put in the sidewalk now, but if in the
Know that.
future.
I'm just talking about this.
Yeah, and this is similar in the sense that both parties now are responsible at some point for putting in a sidewalk if the city says that there's a need for that sidewalk. And you're right, he did reconstruct his property so that this area will no longer be impacted by a drainage area. And that, is appreciated, and that was the concern. So I think this is good for the city because it gets Mr. Kroll what he needs, which is to be able to rebuild, and it gets the city the opportunity for a sidewalk down in the future if the city requires one. So
And there's also been talk at the Safe Routes Committee of a multi-use trail. Was it 8 foot wide, Howard, or 10 foot wide?
That's a possibility, yes. But that would be also in the future as well.
Yeah, it would depend on a lot of grant money. But if a sidewalk were put in and then that grant or that multi-use trail got the grant, then they'd have to tear out the sidewalk. Also be a waste of money.
All right, so we do have a motion and a second to approve. this
I now
item-
have another question.
Yes.
So how is this noted on any document so that in 10 years, we don't have to go back in minutes and find this out?
Well, with or without that condition, the council always has the ability to install sidewalk and assess the owners for the cost. And it's in the ordinance and it's in the state statute. So whether that's your condition this evening or not, doesn't change that situation.
So there is no notation then?
No.
All right, any other questions? We'll vote.
Steiner,
Yes.
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
motion carried.
Next item is ordinance to adopt Wisconsin statute regarding unlawful use of computerized communication systems and harassment. And Doug.
Adoption of these two state statutes would allow us to cite municipally for violations of these offenses. And it's basically keeping up with the advances in technology and correcting an oversight by the adoption of the harassment statute.
Motion to adopt this ordinance revising section 4105 and adding section 947.0125 unlawful use of computerized communication system and 947.013 harassment.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We'll vote.
Steiner,
Yes.
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
motion carried.
Next item is city attorney contract.
Excuse me. Included in your packet is the proposed city attorney's contract. This is a 2-year contract. It expires in April of 2014. After 6 years under the existing contract, the proposal calls for a $25 per hour increase from $125 per hour to $150 per hour. Staff recommends a motion to approve the attached contract.
Questions?
I'm a bit confused. On the fiscal effect, there's an X, no fiscal effect, and then under decreases fund balance, there's a minus, there's 150,000. So help me understand, does this decrease fund balance or is there no fiscal effect?
Well, as the author of the fiscal note, I can assure you that the decreases fund balance that says minus 150 is from a previous note and therefore an error on this form. I apologize.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I would move to approve the new contract for attorney Brian McGraw.
I'll second the motion.
We'll vote.
Steiner,
Yes.
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
motion carried.
Next item is the City of Platteville Parks Endowment Fund, the binding trust.
This is a continuation of what we talked about a month ago. We received a fund for Parks and Rec, and we're looking to put that money into an endowment fund for use of future projects, and hopefully challenging the citizens and businesses in Platteville to help match that fund donated by the bindings. And we're intending to let that money grow, and this would be the start of that.
Luke, do you have anybody right now that is looking to add to this fund right now? You mentioned people are donating money throughout the community. Anybody's come forward or anything in paper?
I do not have anything right now, no.
Okay. And due to the way endowments are running right now, as far as the making, with the low interest rates that are out there, do you think it's going to be wise to put money into one of these? Do you advise that we do, you think, because it's based on that?
The history of these endowments has actually outperformed the market significantly if you look at their 2013 reports.
Okay.
Their past 10-year projections on returns are fairly are much better than what we'd receive if we were to invest it through a city account. I should have probably kept Dwayne up here, but that's the main reason that you're looking to do this. If we're looking to set money aside, it's so you can gain more than just losing out to the what's the word I'm looking for, the cost of living going up, because that's, if we were to set this money aside for future projects that way, we would be losing out to the cost of living and just gaining less and less.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about endowments. Do you have to have 10,000 to start one? Is that like a minimum rate?
The 10,000 is the minimum set up through this particular organization. 10,000 is the amount. We wouldn't need to put that in initially, although within the first 3 years we'd need to reach that $10,000 goal, and there wouldn't be any payouts until we reach that. So that's why I chose to start it out with that $10,000 initially, was so we'd already be at that threshold that they would need in the 3 years. So I felt that was the appropriate amount.
And then the remaining binding trust money would remain in the city's general fund?
I think it'd be wise to not invest all of it right away, only simply going to that minimum. So if situations change and we have a different need for that money, it would still be available, and we can then use that money as a incentive to match any other future revenue that might be coming in.
Okay,
So
but the balance, nothing's going to happen to that. That would
the remaining $30,000.
34,000, yeah.
Currently, I'm not suggesting putting that into the community fund, this endowment, at this time, but in the future, as matches coming in, that is a part of this that I would like to be able to contribute that into that fund to match those dollars that are coming in, projected.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes, I do. I would like the remaining money not part of operating budget in future years. I really would like it to remain in a trust type of group of money or pocket of money to be used for the parks. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'd like.
Yeah, my intent is to invest all that money, but I didn't want to de-incentivize the match by putting it all in initially.
I have a question. Is any of the endowment principal going to be used? Let's say in the future, if the endowment totals 20,000, is it in the agreement that some of the principal can be used?
No. The only amount you would be able to use is the portion of the
Just the earnings.
Yeah, of the earnings that they allocate. So I believe this past year towards, I think they have 35 million in their total accounts, and I believe they issued, you might want to correct me if I'm 4% of that total earnings.
Yeah.
Their fee is 1.25%, right, of per annum based on trailing of 12-month trailing interest. Is that correct, Larry? I asked you a little bit about that.
Quarters.
Quarters, okay, 12 trailing quarters. So there is a fee for this.
There is a fee for this, yes. It is a nonprofit organization, but they're like any investment, they're going through advisors. I believe, there's a list of bank advisors that they have to advise them on this, and there are fees associated with that. Their costs have consistently gone down per percentage of money in the account. I have the breakdown. From 2009, it was 1.94%. To 2013, it was 1.26%. I would imagine that's more just as their amounts are growing. But I think that's a good sign that their costs aren't escalating with the more money that they're gaining in this account.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I did talk with Luke about distribution, and my recommendation is underneath distribution, it says here that the grant to the City of Platteville for charitable purposes and to support projects proposed by City of Platteville employees most responsible parks and recreation. I recommended that there also be included with input from the Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Committee. So that's my recommendation. I think in the case of Freudenreich, we had the money, the grant money going directly to the Freudenreich Committee as far as what to do with the money. So I'm a little bit hesitant to say it's only going to be a city employee that's going to decide upon the projects. So that's my comment. So I'd like to see something stated in there that the Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Committee will be involved also as far as deciding on projects.
So you're saying that the committee would be involved in recommending projects? Is that what you're
Yes, together with
suggesting?
the Recreation Coordinator, Lou, whoever it is.
Thoughts on that, Luke?
Personally, if you were to set a minimum for the amount to spend, I don't know if it's wise to, if there's a smaller project, I don't know. I like the way it's written. I'm not opposed to what Ken's suggesting. More likely than not, especially if it's me, I'm going to be talking with that committee anyway. I don't know. Like I would stick with how it's written, but I'm not opposed to the suggestion.
I'm not sure, but isn't it normal protocol that any projects that you're going to do with Park and Recreation go through the Park and Recreation or the Park and Forestry group?
Mike, I'll be honest, I'm not familiar enough with protocol to know, but I do personally take them to them.
Okay, in the past it was. In the past it was.
Yeah. Any major project goes through that committee.
Thank you.
I would
I
say
just think
also,
it'd be a safe way to do it.
it seems
I
like
use
most,
the word safe.
most major projects also are in the budget, so, the council also has a say on how the money is spent, so. All right. Any other comments? Otherwise, a motion would be in order.
I move to approve.
I move, yep.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
I'll be abstaining.
Yes. Please note she will abstain.
Steiner,
Yes.
Den,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next is the City Hall Task Force Plan recommendation.
At our last meeting, we heard a presentation from Troy Maggie, who is in our audience today if you have questions. That presentation was on the improvements to the City Hall building. And included in your packet is the full report on that. And it's there for your consideration this evening. Are there any questions about the report?
I'd like to make a motion then, if there are any questions, that we adopt the report from the task force recommendations for the improvement of City Hall, and thank them very much for all their hard work and everything they've done.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments?
So your motion is saying adopt or simply accept?
No, adopt.
I said accept.
No,
Accept
accept,
their recommendation.
not adopt?
You just
And
said
adopt.
You said adopt.
I'm sorry, we want to accept their recommendations. That's
So you're
my point.
removing your original motion.
I will start over, thank you.
Well, you can amend your
Yes,
motion.
I'm sorry, okay. The motion is to accept the task force recommendations, okay? And thank them very much for all their hard work.
Is that all right with the second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the recommendations of the task force. We'll vote.
Steiner,
Yes.
Den,
Yes?
Doss,
yes.
Stockhausen,
No.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-1.
All right, that concludes our action items. We're going to go on to information and discussion. And if everyone is here from the Platteville Community Arboretum, then I would say that we could change the order with the council's agreement and have that presentation first. So is Platteville Community Arboretum ready? Okay, if you will come up to the microphone, please.
Which one are we working on now?
We're doing PCA, moving Platteville outdoors.
Oh. It's the very next one.
Eileen.
And if you would give your name, please, and your address.
Hello, Mike Penn, 220 Ellen Street.
Chris Wright, 910 Seymour Street.
Angie Wright, 910 Seymour Street.
Go ahead.
Okay. First, I do have a map of the area in question.
Thank you. Sorry.
Two more, please.
Thank you. Oh,
Need two more, Kim. That's the same, Patrice and
You already got that one, Ken.
I. There we go. All right,
Extra?
Pass it on. They're short.
okay. Give that to Kim. All right, we're ready.
Okay, so I guess as point of clarification, did you receive the staff report and fiscal note regarding this? Okay.
Yes,
Okay, just making sure.
yes, that's the step report.
Okay, so we were here last week, again, as a refresher, and as you can see from the map, the city had graciously given $50,000 towards a match for our $100,000 project last year. And as a result of some meetings in Madison with the DNR, the PCA was encouraged, but due to the nature of the funding, the city is encouraged because the community arboretum cannot submit the grant. It must go through a municipality to pave and light the trail. And so we were looking for trail improvements. And upon the DNR's recommendation, the scope was enhanced when we were basically encouraged to go for a full paving and lighting of the trail as one large project. So the map that I have in front of you shows the three improvements from the $100,000 project from last year, to which the city put $50,000. And you can see basically we're looking at the trail from where it connects with the UW Platteville Trail at the bridge at the Marquis Avenue roundabout, all the way through and around and up and all the way out to Menards, where it will, it is intended to connect to the Platteville Belmont Trail. So one note to be made there, if you look up up in the top, the city trail comes down from Mount View Park, sorry. And that is not at least part of the scope that we're talking about right now. So the initial budget on this project is approximately $1.2 million. There are several fundraising efforts underway in the community, as well as discussions with the university. And the match on this grant is 50-50, so that the DNR would be supporting up to $600,000. We would have to raise the $600,000 And again, the PCA is asking, one, that the 50,000 that was already granted toward the 3 projects be delayed for 1 year, because if we start that construction, we can't use those funds as matching towards the larger project. So one, that we delay those projects and keep that money towards a match towards the larger project. 2, that the city submit the grant and administer it. And 3, that the city would commit $150,000 towards this $1.2 million very substantial trail improvement for the community. I guess that's my introduction, if you have any questions.
I have a question that's more in the future for you, but would you be willing to put in writing that at a certain point in time that it would be multiple use trails? Or because once the DOT, they have it for 7 years, okay, the trails that are on DOT properties.
Okay.
Okay, once 7 years is expired, then I believe it reverts back to either the community or the county to maintain these trails. DOT no longer has anything to do with it after 7 years, okay? So therefore, I would believe, and I have to do a little bit more research to make sure, but I was told that at that point in time, whoever maintains those trails can determine what type of traffic you can have, whether it be just bike or walking or bike, or multi-use.
I'll take this one. I've been heavily involved in the Belmont to Platteville Trail. I'm the person that wrote the original grant for that trail. I can tell you that that trail will never have motorized access. That funding is only for non-motorized transportation.
Based on what?
Based on what the DOT program that the funding came from.
Okay.
DOT will never, that is not technically a DOT trail either. That
Well, I
is,
was told it was.
there are 2 segments that DOT paved, but DOT has a memorandum of understanding with DNR that DNR is responsible for those trails. My understanding, again, I haven't seen it in writing, but my understanding is that the trail will ultimately be turned over to whatever municipality it is located in. That DNR will not take long-term responsibility for these trails either, that the section in Lafayette County will belong to Lafayette County, the section in Grant County, if it's only in the county, will belong to Grant County, and the section within the city of Platteville will be the responsibility of the city of Platteville.
And at that point, you're saying that once everything is turned over to the counties, that those can't possibly be used for motorized trails?
That, my understanding is that if it's ever used for motorized uses, the grant money has to be paid back.
Okay, because I had some other information, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
I would just throw in, I know you're probably curious about snowmobile use and the snowmobile client ATVs.
If you look at the reports from Lafayette County.
ATVs are unlikely, ever. Snowmobiles, we as an organization, PCA, has had a great relationship with the Snowmobile Club. We've always had an agreement that they would have access to the bridge that we're going to build behind culverts. That was part of the agreement. It's written. Yep. They do not actively use our trail. That was also part of the situation and the agreement. They have other routes to get to that bridge. That's not to say that snowmobilers in general don't use our trail, but the people that are part of the club had agreed not to use the trail.
Yes, I talked to them.
Since that time, the clubs have also split. So part of our responsibility at this time is to communicate with both of those clubs what the situation will be with the new trail. And we're in the process of setting those up.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
Just for clarification, what we're talking about this evening is the trail that, excuse me, basically starts at the Pioneer Stadium and goes to the area behind the Walmart Supercenter. The other area is not what we're talking about. The Platteville to Belmont Trail is a separate effort.
Yeah,
Okay.
that will, the Platteville to Belmont Trail will end sort of where right behind Menards, where there's kind of a spur there. Where your trail, yeah, he indicates on your map where the two, they will become one and they will integrate seamlessly, but we would just pave up, this project is just looking up to that point. The grant that Lafayette County has will take it from the other end in.
The blacktop trail coming off of the road up above behind Menards. That blacktop trail comes down right to where it
Yeah.
ends right where
That will
you're
actually,
talking about.
that trail will actually be redone as part of the Belmont Platteville project. That funding source is requiring that they redo that section of the trail so it's ADA compliant.
And then it has connectivity to a surface road, right? So,
Yeah, and the federal funding wants connectivity to a surface street. So that spur trail provides connectivity to, I think it's Keystone Parkway.
Keystone, there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, because it's federal funding, it has to be ADA compliant. So they will be redesigning that spur to make it ADA compliant and make it connect to Keystone Parkway.
Can you just clarify again for me the bridges and obviously over the streets? What am I doing?
I'll show you.
Oh, you're sure, okay.
The trail bridges or road bridges?
The road bridges.
Oh, they're down here, 151.
Are,
So
do they go
Marquee-
under the two
It
bridges?
does. It goes over under both Marquee and then under Business Highway 151.
Goes under right here by McDonald's.
Okay.
Under
Very
there.
significant barrier.
Pardon me?
The trail does not go under 8081,
No.
between Super 8 and
Right there, it goes over it. But
Mike,
right
could you
here it
speak
goes
into the
under bridge.
microphone? So we're talking
So-
now about the bridges on 151 and,
Yes, so
Okay.
the trail starts at the new Marquee roundabout, and then it goes underneath Business 151 by Katie's Garden, and then it goes along, and then where it comes out at 81 between Super 8 and the Dunkin' Donuts site, it does not go under that bridge. That is a significant barrier that it's a reality that we face. Then the trail goes along behind. It does go under Business 151 by Novus Glass and Fastenal. And then it comes up and goes down, and then we have trail bridges, one that we'll be relocating to connect along Valley Road, and then goes.
Does it go
From there.
under Mineral Street too?
Yes.
Yes.
Does it go under- yeah.
Under the bridge on Mineral Street?
What a challenge.
That's already in place, going under the bridge
Correct.
on Mineral
Yeah.
Street.
All the spurs or terraces have already been built for the trail under all of those bridges.
I look at this and say that park impact fees are a good use for this kind of thing. I do really think that is excellent, but when we start looking at $115,000 to be pledged out of the balance of the CIP for the city, that gets to be a real difficult thing, because right now, we're not able to complete projects that we want to complete for keeping the roads in the city of Platteville. So we had to go to one project instead of two, because of dollars and cents, and so that's an awful tough thing to be looking for the city when we have other places for that to keep our cars going in our streets.
That beats trying to come up with 1.2 million.
Well, I understand and I appreciate that any request for money that's not previously in the budget is problematic.
I believe there are more out there in park impact fees though than just the 35,000, isn't there?
Excuse me. Actually, there was an update today. Dwayne had done some additional research. Actually, there's approximately 98,000 in that account. And then after we take out the monies that are committed for the 2014 project, that leaves about 63,000, give or take, in that account. So, in a future updated to this fiscal note, I would actually reduce that the staff recommendation to 30,000 instead of 35,000, so that we use roughly half of that. there are places that you can, you can certainly use more or less of the park impact fees. Staff is just recommending that we use no more than half of it for this one project, so that we have some for other potential projects. But that's obviously the call of the council.
Thank you.
Are those park impact fees, Howard, are they ever depleted almost to nothing? Or, I mean, do you like to keep the park impact fees at a minimum?
We haven't had those for very long, just 4 or 5 years, as I recall. So I don't.
So not much history on it.
We don't have a whole lot of history on all of that. We do have a sizable balance because of things like Roundtree Commons and some of the other apartment buildings that have gone up recently at $380 per unit. That's a very sizable sum of money that was given for those projects. If we have more of those kinds of projects that go in, then we'll have more money that we can use and we can allocate for projects like this.
I would just like to make a note as a grant writer and on that. I understand city budgets are tight and it's tough. The attractiveness of this project will be significantly increased with a fairly significant city input. If we're going to private foundations or the Wisconsin DNR and they see that the city's not really vested in this project, the proposals are not going to look quite as attractive to them, just as something to note. We met with the Alliant Energy Foundation earlier this year, and their executive director said to us, I think 3 or 4 times over the course of the meeting, sounds like the city's getting a pretty good deal on this project. So just that's a foundation executive telling us what they thought of, and again, other executives are likely to look at it in a similar manner.
Could I also add with regard to the matching, if the city were to grant the 150,000 match and associate that with the requirement for a local match, so that would be another 150,000, and then the 600,000 from the DNR. While it is 150,000, it is leveraging a pretty massive investment to come back into the community, half of which would be state dollars that doesn't necessarily come with many other city investments. So.
Well, I, for one, I would say that I think it's a wonderful project. I would support it, and I really appreciate all the work that your group does, the dedication that you have. You've accomplished a lot over, the past, I don't know how many years you've been in existence, but it's been
2004.
And I think it would be really good for Platteville. It'd be good for tourism. It's good all the way around, no matter how you look at it. So I would wholeheartedly support it. Where, like Mike says, where the money's going to come from, besides the park impact fees, I'm not sure either, but it's certainly worth trying very hard.
It might be a lot easier down the road when you can show us in writing that the University Foundation or different parts of the university, how much they're actually going to give you. So there's something concrete instead of just, oh, we've talked with them. Because that would help a whole lot. Because talking and actually having, folks, is 2 different things.
As we get commitments, we'll let you know as we get those.
That would be helpful.
We're
Thank
doing
you.
all sorts of things. The flip side of that coin, right, is the other argument, and that is those other entities that we approach would like to see the city saying, we support this.
I'm sure they would.
Right? So it's a little bit of a catch-22.
Yeah, and I will say, this morning I submitted an application to the Dr. Scholl Foundation on behalf of PCA, asking them for $25,000. It would have been really great to be able to really say, the city has already supported this. Can you support it too? I was able to say, the DNR, we're hoping to support this. But, again, we're going to be continually submitting applications as we go along, the DNR one being due May 1st. The more local support I can show to these outside foundations, the more likely that they're going to be willing to buy in as well.
I understand. And one thing I think that we all need to take in concept here is that just biking, just hiking trails do bring in some things, but nothing compared to a multi-use trail. And you can look at the results and the reports that have been done and the all the information that comes out of Lafayette County. There's quite a packet of what those multi-use trails bring into that area. And I'm sure you folks are already familiar with that. You've probably already looked at those reports. But if you haven't, I actually have a copy of it. Thank you.
I agree that that kind of activity brings in dollars, but after hearing some of the local people who are very heavily involved in bicycling and different kinds of competition for bicycling, I think there's a great future for attracting a lot of bicycling events to our city once this trail is completed. And just something else, I know that the room tax revenue is in our general fund budget, as I understand it, and it's used for tourism. Maybe that's something we can look at in the future as well. In 2015, say that a certain amount of the room tax revenue would be dedicated toward this project, because it certainly is a tourism effort in my view. So just another option.
I know you approached the chamber. I got a letter in the mail about the chamber. What do you think? What's happening there? I know I'm on the committee to make calls to major companies, but I just wanted to know if you can tell me more. Did you contact the chamber or just Jean?
Jean did most of the conversation with them, but Building Platteville is actually going to be leading the business fundraising efforts. The chambers, I believe, there are chamber members and chamber or people that are also on the chamber that are going to be participating in that, but Building Platteville is going to be the lead organization for the business fundraising efforts in town. And that's my understanding. There is the chamber breakfast Thursday morning, the Good Morning Platteville. Jean will be presenting at that with additional information as well.
And that is at 7:30 at Take Two Restaurant, I believe. Correct. Okay. Okay, any other questions? We have a lot to think about, and this is not on for action this evening. It's only on for information, but if we have more questions, I'm sure we can have.
When does it come under action?
It's not for action this evening, no, it's only for information.
But when will that happen?
Next meeting, it will be on for action.
So there's a lot to think about.
There's a lot to think about, yep. So if there are no other questions, thank you all very much for your presentation. Appreciate it.
If you do have any questions, please contact us.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you.
Dick, did you have another one you wanted to?
Melissa.
Because we also have someone else who's here that is available to talk about G. If the need arises, again, with the council's permission, we will put that next.
G.
So we'll talk about the purchase of the 4.8 acre parcel from Jim and Doris Harms. And Larry, will you be taking that? Okay.
This enclosed in your packet is the offer to purchase for the property used to expand our stormwater pond. I know Director Paul is here from PADIC, and the recommendation is coming from PADIC that we purchase 4.8 acres to expand our stormwater pond in order to serve the area the City Council recently purchased to expand the industrial park. So the 39 acres that we purchased last year, what we're trying to do is build a stormwater pond that will serve those 39 acres with stormwater detention. Enclosed in the packet is the offer to purchase. It's about 4.8 acres of land, and we're looking for approximately $150,000. The City Council did approve the funding for $1 million worth of infrastructure improvements to the Rosemeyer property, the former Rosemeyer property. And we would use that funding to help pay for the land to expand the stormwater basin. And then we're also using the remainder money
to apply for an EDA grant to match it. So with any luck, we'll get the stormwater pond finished as well as all of the public infrastructure in 2014.
And the $150,000 will come out of TID number 4?
That's correct.
And so there was a question, I believe, about an easement. Is that a question that was being asked, or is that not something that we need to? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself, please.
Paul with Paydeck at 52 Means Drive. And Brian's not here. The question came up after we negotiated the contract with the Harms that we're purchasing the narrow strip of land. I don't know if you guys have this in a map. And we're granting them an easement because his land will be landlocked. So we have to give him access to his land. And what we didn't clarify was that if a public roadway were to be built, that the easement would be dissolved. When that language came out, we had already signed the contract. I talked to the Harmses today. They said it's fine if we need to revise it. Does anybody have any questions on anything
One
else?
quick one. We didn't have a chance to finish our conversation here before we started, but you said it's gonna be TIF money out of TIF 4, and that won't extend the length of the TIF. The TIF will still close at the same prescribed time, which is in the near future.
Yeah, correct. This was just an approved, is that the language, right? Approved use.
Yes, we
Expenditure,
amended the
approved
TID plan
expenditure.
with the intent of using this funding to make these improvements.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep, thank you. Does anybody have anything else on this?
I think we should thank
Okay, again,
Melissa
this will
for,
be on for action.
we should thank Melissa for negotiating this.
Yes, thank you for your effort.
Yes, we're very happy with it. I mean, Paydeck worked very hard on this, and it'll be good. The opportunity for the grant is a really good one, and we were able to secure a letter from a business that I've been working with for the last couple months, that's considering this site, and that will really help position us with that grant. So that's really hoping that we can increase our spending power by $800,000. And just so you know, the $200,000 that we kind of carved out for this land transaction, $150,000 is for the transaction of the land. The $50,000 was left aside for closing costs. We don't expect that it's going to be that much. Engineering fees, survey costs, closing costs. So we probably will have a little bit more of that also.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. I think that's probably it. We can probably go back to A. Start with rental license inspection program, ordinances and fees.
Yeah, we had previously talked about potential changes to the licensing and inspection fees. I have revised the numbers and solidified the numbers a little bit from the last time we met. But just to recap, the intent was to change the way we charge for the rental license, essentially to create a fee structure that recognizes the amount of time and effort that goes into doing the inspections, and have the fees that are charged reflect that time. And also to have a fee schedule that is, I guess, closer to covering the actual costs of operating the program. I think those are the two main goals that we're shooting for with this revised schedule. So with that in mind, what we have in front of you would be two different schedules. The first one, the rental license fee schedule, that would be what the actual property owner would pay to obtain the rental license for each housing unit. The second one would be the MV Services payment schedule. That would be the fee that we pay MV Services, who is our rental inspection contractor, to conduct the inspections for those units that then become licensed. They both follow the same basic format, obviously, to recognize, as I mentioned, the time that it takes to conduct those inspections. The one thing that you'll notice between those is there's basically a $12 difference between those fees, and that was set to reflect the amount of time that city staff has in operating the program. So that above what we pay MV Services, the additional fee will cover staff time that is involved in it. So in essence, with this new fee schedule, the fees that we collect will cover all the costs of operating the program. That's based on a lot of assumptions as far as staff time, because there's no set amount of time that we spend on it every day. It's just kind of a thing that comes and goes as far as most of our duties. So it is based on some estimates. But that is what we had been shooting for. And there's some additional fees as far as, late fees, reinspection fees. And again, those are geared towards having the units that require more effort and expense and more time, that they pay additional fees to recognize that. So if council is agreeable to this, at the next meeting, there'll be two items that will require approval. The first one is a resolution to actually amend the 2014 fee schedule. He had previously adopted all the other fees for this year. We did not approve any changes to the rental licenses because he wanted to look at additional. So that resolution would make that amendment. And the other one, since the fees that MV Services are paid currently as part of their contract, we would have to amend their contract. The current contract has a fee schedule section in that contract. We would have to amend that contract to recognize these new fees that they would be paid. So there would be two separate motions that would be required by the council. Any questions?
Have you talked with MV Services about the change in fees?
Yes, they are agreeable to the fee schedule that is in your packet.
Okay, my next question is, what constitutes 2 inspections? Let's say, for example, you have 1 inspection, you have some things that need to be done. Is coming back to look to see if you've done those things the second inspection? So how do you differentiate?
Yes. Although I did talk to Marty at MV, and he says it's kind of been their unofficial practice if they come at 9 o'clock in the morning, do the inspection, and it's a very simple item that you can correct that afternoon, they come back, they would consider that 1 inspection. If it's items that require additional work, they have to come back in a couple of weeks or a month, then that's a second inspection that would count as an additional fee. And I know they say a lot of landlords typically have, they'll have batteries, they'll have extra smoke detectors, they'll have extra, items that are kind of the common infractions, and they'll be doing the work as he's there, or, that day, if at all possible, to reflect that.
So if you had to paint the house, it'd be a second inspection to make sure it's done.
Correct.
Other questions? I guess the only question I have is on, I believe it's the last page, Joe. It says, additional fees, reinspection fee, and then failure to allow inspection, and their fees are added to the license fee. The photographic documentation fee, if requested by the city, and the meeting fee for the meetings relating to Enforcement Board of Appeals, who pays those fees?
Those 2 fees were in the contract right now. Mm-hmm. Since there's been no discussion of amending those, I just carried those forward. But if required, those would be items that the city requests of MV specifically, so the city would cover those costs.
Okay, so the city would be the one requesting that information.
Right. As of today, we've never incurred either one of those expenses.
So, but not the reinspection fee, just the photographic documentation fee and the meeting fee.
Correct.
The other 2 would be paid by the property owner.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else, anyone?
It appears that the amount that is paid to, I took a few and did a little math. It appears that it's about an 80-20 split.
I'm sorry, 80-20.
If you look at the fees that are paid by the rental owner versus what is paid to the rental contract, it appears that that's about 80% in most cases.
There's a $12 difference between
So it's just
every
a
category.
$12, okay. So
Right.
it's just that I happened to get 2 that were.
Yeah, and as I included a kind of how I came up with the estimate of the staff time based on our hours
Right,
and so
based
forth.
on your hours.
And, you know, the $12 is what I would estimate we would need to cover our city staff time operating the program.
Joe, this hasn't got anything to do with the fee, actual fee part of it, but what constitutes not issuing a person a rental license if they don't go, does it take 2 or 3 inspections they don't qualify for? Then can that be done, or is it something more severe than that?
Well, excuse me, they would not be eligible for a license until the unit meets all the requirements of the
Okay.
ordinance. So,
And if
You
you
know,
rent an unlicensed unit, then you're,
then you're subject to citations.
and if you rent
theoretically
it
every
all
day.
month, then you're subject to 30 citations.
Yeah, and the way we've always operated, if you have an existing unit that's licensed and you're in the process of going through the inspection procedures and the license expires, you're not going to get a citation because you're involved in the process. The only time that's come up is if they just don't have a license and they're knowingly, you know, licensing or leasing that unit without a license. Then we have run into situations where we've resulted in citations. And usually it only takes a couple before the situation is resolved.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right,
We should come back with a contract and an amendment to the fees.
yes, for next
already in
meeting.
Good.
Parking lot on Fourth and Furnace.
On January 16th, the city of Platteville completed the purchase of the parking lot on the corner of 4th and Furnace. It's now necessary for the city council to discuss how they would like that property handled. In the staff note, I recommended adding the parking lot to the assigned parking program. Since that point, I've had discussions with several council members who also would like to explore the idea of opening the parking lot up for public employees. I've since surveyed the employees who work at City Hall and have found that there may or may not be an interest depending on what the target is. Our police station would be very interested in having that additional parking. Apparently, there is not enough parking at the police station. At City Hall, 3 employees were in favor of having it as a parking lot, whereas we did get 11 people who said they probably wouldn't use it as a public parking lot. Falling back to my staff note, and the recommendation was to add it to the assigned parking program. This would generate additional revenue for the city of Platteville and perhaps recover the cost of the parking lot over a number of years. Does anyone have any questions about what's in your packet?
So some of the staff is agreeable to getting a lease spot?
No, I think the question was posed, if the city opened this parking lot for city employee parking, would you use it? And several.
At no charge.
Right. And most of them, I think, would prefer to continue to park on the street closer to City Hall.
Well, there still is a lot of interest for reserved parking around, isn't there? I mean, there.
Well, in your
group
packet-
had asked about that, Barb?
In your
Okay.
packet, you'll see that I included a few maps, maps of our existing assigned parking program. And there are a few spaces that are still open, specifically space number 62 to 71, have been added to the assigned parking program but have not been used. I think that the demand for these parking spaces is perhaps greatest at the semester breaks, and right now there just isn't that demand. I do expect that the demand will be regenerated in August. So
I think with the discussion that we had on this earlier, we looked at if we reserved all those stalls that would be in that lot, it would come to about a 6-year return on our money.
yeah, that sounds
To be
appropriate.
paid for in 6 years, which makes a lot of sense right now.
Assuming we could lease them all, yep.
True, assuming.
This was a topic of conversation at the RDA meeting last night. And I think it was the feeling of those who were attending that making this lot, sequestering this lot for city employees without charge to those employees could cause hard feelings with business owners in the downtown. That it'd be like, I have to pay for parking for my employees or find a place, yet somehow now the city goes out and spends money and purchases this lot, and city employees get to park there for free. So I think that there was, and
So business
Joey-
owners are concerned that they have to pay for parking for their employees,
But
but the
city-
city pays for parking for their employees, and that's an issue?
But the city doesn't pay for parking for the employees. City taxpayers pay for parking for city employees. I think that's the difference.
Where's the parking spaces that the downtown businesses are paying rent on? I don't know whether there's any. Them 7 up here are all by individual people.
I think, Dick, that is the, I'm expressing what was expressed by citizens who are on the RDA last night, that felt that this would be a contentious issue.
Other comments or questions on this particular parking lot?
So I personally favor making it assigned parking, as we discussed. a long
So
time
do
ago.
I.
And I do have a question. Are there cars parking in this parking lot now? That parking lot, that area used to be full all the time. So when we took, I'm assuming we've closed on this lot, that it is our property.
Yes, that's correct.
And so, the people who were parking there are,
Unknown. We have not granted permission to anyone to park there, and we are not under any lease or arrangement at this point. So when the city council determines what the desire is with this lot, we will be sure to make sure that others comply with your desire.
Well, it was my understanding when we considered purchasing this property was to lease it for the duration till we collected our fees and recouped our money. So I would recommend we continue a lease process so we can proceed at that level. In fact, I think, Ken, you brought that up, that we could find some revenue coming from leasing the slots. So that would be my recommendation.
I will leave it on for action then at your next meeting.
Please.
On, one other question, the lots that are available for lease over on Roundtree Avenue, those are not all leased out, are they?
No, they are not. In fact, there's a chart on the second or third page within your packet
I saw that.
that shows 3 of them have been leased. The remaining are unleased.
Yeah, so it makes me wonder, since we have all those available for lease, would we be able to lease 18 spaces out here?
Those came into play though at midterm, didn't they?
Yes, I believe they did.
Well, they're coming into midterm right now.
Before we're able to lease them, we're probably going to have to stripe and number these as well as put up some signs. So we're not going to be able to do that in March probably.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait till the weather gets a little warmer.
I guess what I'm leading to is perhaps it could be half and half. I mean, if there are city hall employees and police department employees who would like to park over there, perhaps we could start with half up for lease and then the other half for city employees. Again, just a thought.
All
We
right.
still have a lot of places over in Roundtree Avenue that are available.
So this will come back at the next meeting.
Yes.
Next is zoning code amendments, building height and setback requirements, and Joe, I think this would be you.
Yeah, there's a proposal to amend the zoning ordinance regarding the minimum building setback requirements and the maximum building height requirements. I initially started looking at this issue when I noticed some I would consider conflicts with the design standards in our zoning ordinance. The ordinance requires obviously changes to commercial and multifamily buildings to improve the appearance, and a big part of that is, you know, roof, what the roof, how the roof is designed to break up, you know, a large expanse of the building, and that tends to result in taller buildings, and there's been some instances where that runs up to the maximum building height, and it makes it difficult to comply with those requirements. And a similar situation where our design standards require or recommend that the parking be located in the side or the rear yard, but the parking is allowed to be right up to the lot line, and the building has to be set back a significant distance. So it causes results in the parking always being in the front yard, whether the building owner wants to put it there or not. So I started looking at, you know, how we could amend that, and there's some other things that came up. The downtown revitalization plan had a recommendation to increase the building height in the downtown area, and there have been some variances approved over the years that you know, are related to building setbacks or building height. So I looked at all of that and came up with a recommendation on modifications to those standards, and it affects almost all of the zoning districts, and I've got a chart in there that shows the changes that I'm recommending. The building height for the most part is fairly minor. It's 5 feet additional height for most districts, or 10 feet in some. I also tried to get some consistency, so the residential districts are the same, the commercial districts are the same, the industrial are more similar. That was the other goal that I proposed. So that'll be on for your vote next time. But the Plan Commission did review these changes at a couple different meetings, and they did recommend approval of these changes as presented. Are there any questions?
I have a question. Was the fire department at all involved in this review in terms of, I mean, there's one thing about changing building heights, there's another thing about the fire equipment that we have in the event that there's a fire, and whether we have adequate equipment for the building heights that are proposed. I'm not suggesting we do or don't.
Right.
I'm just asking if the fire department has been consulted at all or not.
Yeah, we have a monthly staff meeting with the fire department, and they were aware of these recommendations. Their only concern, if you look at the downtown revitalization plan, there's actually a couple of options included in that plan as far as building height, and I think one of them is up to 120 feet. They were not in favor of that type of a height for the reasons that you mentioned, but they didn't have any concern with, you know, the smaller height as recommended. You know, the one advantage of the taller buildings in the building code is the requirements of the building code itself are much more stringent as far as sprinklers and alarm systems, so that tends to offset a little bit of that concern.
So you still like that 70-foot in that central business transition, or central business zone? Huh?
As I mentioned, that's the recommendation from the downtown revitalization plan.
I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah.
Because maybe 60 feet I would be in favor of, but not 70.
I have a question. I've asked Joe this question. What is the maximum height of buildings downtown? Omit Jenner Towers, buildings on Main Street. Do you ever have a chance to look at buildings and get the measurements, present height?
No, but I can get some examples for the next meeting.
I'm trying to compare what 70 feet looks like in comparison to what we have right now.
Right.
Approximately 7 stories.
What is Jenner Tower?
More than that, I think.
It's 9, isn't it?
I'm not sure, but I think it's more than 7 stories.
It's a 6-story to the main part. Downhill portion is got a 7-story because part of that basement is exposed.
My next question is, are there any minimum standards as far as height? So for example, out here is Garvey's service station. If that were removed, what's the smallest building that could be built out there? Is there any limit as to the minimum?
Not in the zoning ordinance.
Nothing in the
No,
zoning, so
we
they
do
could put in
have-
something that doesn't fit. I mean, the building there burned years ago, and then they put in the service station, so it's too small.
We do have the design guidelines that were adopted as part of a follow-up to the downtown revitalization plan. There was language in there that, you know, recommends.
But so it's just a
Matching.
recommendation, it's not an ordinance.
Correct.
We need a minimum also, because we have that one, and we have the one that's Morrissey Printing, and what's that, Bob Dugout? That's
Right.
a small building that was built as a gamble store. Heiser's.
Other questions or comments? All right, we'll bring that one back too then. The Broadway reconstruction, we have the maps all laid out on that table, so again, with the council's indulgence, we will probably move that to the last item so that we can go over and look at the maps while we're discussing the bids. So that brings us to E, which is the weed and grass mowing contract.
This is our annual ordinance, or our annual contract to enforce the tall grass ordinance, and hopefully we will be seeing grass sometime in the near future, but at some point in time, we just need to go ahead and award a contract for that work. The low bidder was Grass Pro Lawn Care. They bid $65 per hour or $75 minimum for what we call the large rural type areas, and $35 per hour or $39 minimum for our isolated and residential lawn patches. Last year, the base bids were $35 and $25. We'll be recommending that you award to Grass Pro for that.
What about the other bid on the back?
The other bid by Felderman Lawn, last year we had no rural type areas to mow. What we're talking about there are those areas that are either unlandscaped or are generally an acre or more in size. The isolated patches, residential areas, are the ones that we've had mostly in the last couple of years. So I looked at that and thought that the lower price for base bid number 2 would probably be better for the citizens than the flat rate across the board.
Go ahead, Barb.
No, this is paid, we charge this out to the landowner, right?
That's correct.
We charge this to the people that don't want to be bothered to mow their yards to comply. So why are we concerned with what might be fair when it comes to, you're looking at $40 versus $65 for Felderman on the first bid. Both of them are 40. One of the Grass Pros are $65 and $75. There's a considerable difference there. When we get down into the individual yards, yes, there's Felderman State at 40. But if you have enough of this larger mowing area, this also would be like somebody has a bunch of lots and they haven't mowed them off, so then we have to bring the people in to mow them, correct? You're including that stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
What we're talking about the rural type areas are those areas that have multiple lots, a subdivision where a developer has 3-4 lots altogether. They're not really landscaped yet, they're not developed, and so we go out there with brush hogs, with weed eaters, and we clean up those areas. If you're talking about just the standard residential property where the normal quarter acre, house lot that's been landscaped and everything else, that's that base bid number 2.
Correct.
And like I say, in the past couple of years, we have not had many, if at all, of those rural type areas. They've mainly been the residential types. You can choose whichever one you wish. I just felt that the reduced price for the residential was more advantageous for the citizens, but as you pointed out, we bill that back to the offending property, so that's up to you.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. Next item is the extended taxi service hours for 2014.
Yes, this is a cleanup issue right here. Back in September, the council approved a motion to expand the hours for the shared ride taxi for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights from September 12th, 2013 through the end of the calendar year. We had discussed this during the 2014 budget sessions, and I included funding for the extended hours for this calendar year. And I believed that it was council's desire when they passed the budget that you intended to keep those extended hours for 2014. We went through the minutes, and we wanted to make sure that there was clarification that was in fact the council's intent. So we're asking that you approve the continuation for 2014.
And are we to assume that we will get ridership data as we are getting now?
That's correct. We have already received January's data, and that was in a previous packet, and we should be getting February's here next week.
Any other questions?
Yes. Been brought to my attention that there's still people that would like to see an extended Sunday afternoon instead of this 1 o'clock, mainly because a lot of folks that don't drive to church go to church, and then they want to go someplace to eat, brunch or whatever, and they can't do it because the cab is done at 1 p.m. This has come from the senior center.
Are you asking that it be extended, and if so,
I'm just
to what
bringing
time?
it up because this is still in information.
Well, that would extend the contract, so then there would be more money involved unless hours were cut from someplace else. Is that correct?
That is correct. The other issue is changing the hours from what I had originally proposed to the DOT would require a full public hearing with proper notifications that would take us out 5 or 6 weeks.
Do you know what the cost is for every hour extended?
It's $24.99 per hour by the contract.
So to extend it till 2 o'clock on Sunday would add $24 to the contract.
25, yes.
24 times 52.
Correct.
So it'd be another $1,200 or whatever. And that's not in the budget right now.
Correct.
It seemed to me, Dick, that the senior center should survey their members, or, there should be some survey of seniors to see how much ridership there might be, not only from the senior center, but perhaps also from the other facilities that cater to seniors.
Connie, can you shed any light on that, please?
Okay, what information were you looking for? What was the question?
The amount from the seniors that,
Dick has mentioned that having the taxi stop at 1 o'clock on Sunday, he has heard at the senior center that this continues to be problematic, that they would like, that there's perhaps a need for extended hours. So my question was, is this 1 or 2 people, or is this lots of people? And the suggestion was to perhaps survey the seniors prior to the next development of the budget. So if it costs $24 for every additional hour of taxi, that we can see where that would go.
Well, my information has come from generally a group of seniors who are interested in attending brunch, like Dick mentioned. I had a personal situation come up where we needed taxi service, handicapped taxi service to the hospital daily for a procedure, and it was not available on Sunday afternoon. So that was a difficult thing to deal with that limitation. And there was also, there are also a lot of people who don't drive, who have loved ones in the nursing homes that they want to visit. They want to go to church in the morning and visit in the afternoon. So nursing homes, assisted living, and that type of thing. I can see if I can find that information for you and get some concrete numbers, if that's what you're looking for, and see if I can get a feeling for how strong that need is.
Exactly.
Thanks, Connie.
Anything else? Okay, then we're on to the Legion Park Endowment Fund.
In 2011, the city entered into a contract with Platteville Youth Baseball to establish the sign program at Legion Park. The agreement was that in 2012 and 2013, that money would go to youth baseball, partially to fund the batting cages and just to their general funds for field improvements. And now in 2014, that money is switching over, and within the contract, 50% of that fund is to go into an endowment fund to benefit Legion Park field baseball, softball, and concession areas. So that's the attachment that you have in front of you is establishing that. The remaining 50% is going to remain in a trust. That trust to be going into or to be used again specifically for improvements to Legion Park baseball and softball facilities.
Who's the management group?
Once again, it's the Community Foundation of Southern Wisconsin.
Luke, could you tell me what is the dollar value off of the advertising on the signs per year up there right now?
How much each user is paying?
The total is.
There is a slight variance, but it's between $250 and $200 a year for those signs.
For each one? Or
Each
total?
one.
For each one?
Each for each individual sign that's up there, yes.
We, those of us that are interested parties, we pay for the initial setup, the design and the installation, and then we get charged an annual rent, if you want to call it, to keep our sign there. As you can tell, I think there's one that has been taken down recently. So you'll see, probably continue to see some change there, but there's three right now, 3 diamonds that have advertisement. So there's a goal to continue.
Absolutely. I see this fund as continuing to grow. I think was an excellent decision, and it was an excellent opportunity when youth baseball presented it to the city, because it does raise a lot of revenue. And also, I really do think, and this is my sales pitch, I guess, any businesses out there, it's an excellent advertising opportunity. I mean, you get to gain a lot of exposure for the amount of money that you're paying. So we hope to continue to grow that. I know the initial goal was to get up to $10,000 a year in revenue. We're not quite there yet, but we're pretty close.
And the reason for my question, I was just curious to see what approximately half of it would be, so there would be money available right away to do things that you wanted to do in case you needed to, instead of it being tied up for a while.
Yeah, there is going to be a roughly, I believe, 3,600 coming in outside of that would be available right away. I'm very much involved with youth baseball. I've been to most of their meetings recently. We all have the same goal for this money. It's to improve Legion Park. And I think it was quite wise how this contract was established, in that 50% of that money is available right away should we have projects to do with that. The remaining gets set aside for more to protect the long-term interest of youth baseball, and that's what's great about these endowment funds is they're long-term. They're not the short-term, and I'm really excited to have these two, the one that just passed today, and if we can get this one established, well, hopefully we do, because it's in our contract with youth baseball. I would hate to default on that contract, but Yeah.
Thank you.
My question still was, and I've never had clarification on who's gonna manage, like, who sends me my bill?
The city now sends out the bill.
Okay.
And that has changed. Previously, it was going out by youth baseball. So the city sent out all the bills this year. Immediately, I was worried that there might have been some concern about that might not have been explained. They may be concerned about the bill coming from the city. So I started down the list. I probably called the first 15 businesses on our list, received no hesitation whatsoever that bill was going to be coming. So I stopped. As soon as I stopped doing that, I did get one call. So I've had one call so far that was coming from the city. I think it was a positive because I was able to explain that, our goals for this money, and quite honestly, after that call, I welcomed the other calls, and we didn't get any, but I would welcome any call that we got because I'm happy to talk about it with anyone, what the goals are. And, like I said, youth baseball is one of the organizations that I've had the most contact with since I've started.
Other questions? All right. The binding trust donation to EMS.
Similar to the Parks Fund, our EMS department also received a grant from the Binding Trust. Included in your packet is a recommendation from the city manager as well as a request from the EMS administrator, Brian Allen. City manager is recommending that we look at something similar as we did with the Parks Department in creating a trust or a long-term program to use the funds to benefit the community over the long term. The EMS administrator is suggesting that perhaps there are some immediate needs that he'd like to see addressed and is recommending the purchase of 2 auto pulse units for approximately $31,000. Does anyone have any questions?
Is Brian going to be at the next meeting, Larry, to talk about what he wants to purchase?
Brian has made a commitment to becoming a paramedic, and he has classes on the same night as the city council meeting.
Yeah, but I thought it ended in February.
Oh, perhaps. My understanding was that he would not be available, but if it ends in February, then he will certainly be here at our next meeting.
I could be wrong. I thought that's what was mentioned last fall when he wasn't coming.
Okay.
But it would be nice if he could be here to explain, what he wants to purchase, because it's difficult for the council to make a decision when we don't really know what they are and
Yep.
how important it is to have them in an ambulance. So.
When we talked setting the agenda, there were some questions from the council leadership, and I did phone Mr. Allen and ask him to add some answers in his memo as to other organizations that may have this, what the costs are, how much is left, and that kind of information into his memo. I assure you that Brian would really like to be here to explain this and to go over the equipment with you.
And that price is for 2, right?
Excuse me?
The price, the 30,000, the 31,000 is for 2?
Yes. Yep.
Pulse units?
I don't believe there's any urgency with this at this point, but it's still an outstanding issue, and we could certainly table it until the next meeting if you'd like.
Oh, okay. Well, that's true.
It's just on for
Until he can be available, I would imagine.
From my experience of being involved as a first responder for about 30 years, this is a very important tool in additional life support under heart attack conviction, anything that would involve with the heart, because of the lack of and the times you can't continue doing the proper CPR and everything else when you're transporting people. This fills a lot of gaps. It's a very good piece of equipment.
Yeah, but on the other hand, we want to spend the money and then the money's gone.
You save one life.
The other departments that have received this binding money are talking about investing it. So. I don't know, that's why I want to talk to Brian.
So, would you check with Brian to see whether or not he's available March 11th? If he's not, Patrice, do you think someone else from the department could
that's true.
also, ask perhaps if he could, if he's comfortable having someone else come and explain more about this equipment, that would be another option.
And
Otherwise,
perhaps with some statistics.
yeah, and otherwise we could wait and have it on for information discussion again. All right, the last item is the Broadway reconstruction contract, and because, again, we'll be moving over to the table, that's gonna conclude the, televised portion. Sorry, go ahead.
The question with this, I think it would be advisable to do a work session on this because there's so much here, so we then can sit down and really concentrate and go over all this instead of, you know, the hour and everything else. If we did this in a work session, I think we'd be better off and we'd all be able to get a better idea of how or what all of our options are.
Well, I think I'm going to ask if we can wait on that, or is time of the essence in terms of looking at this contract?
Which contract are you talking about, Mike? The EMS contract?
No, the Broadway.
The Broadway,
Construction.
which
There's
is the
so
next
many
thing we'll
different
be
options
talking
here.
about.
And so many different prices and so many different things to discuss.
Okay.
I think it would be
Um,
best held in a work session.
We really should award the bid by the next council meeting, in order to make sure that we have all the contract documents taken care of and everything done so that whoever the contractor is can get to work as soon as the weather will allow us to do so. If we delay it significantly, I'm concerned that will delay the start and could delay the finish of the project at the very end. This is going to be an all-year project for us. If you wish to have a work session at a different time, so that we can still look at awarding the contract at the next scheduled council meeting, that's acceptable to me.
That would be fine with me.
I thought we were going to do a lot of that now, but
I would,
One person.
yeah, I personally would like to look at it this evening. I think we have all the information in front of us.
I wanna go ahead.
Oh, yes.
You're gonna be here a while then.
Well,
I'm not available and to do it at another time.
okay.
Well, we'll just plan on being here then a while.
We'll be doing it this evening, so again,
Don't ask too many questions. Let
Oh,
Howard
but
do
there's a
the
reason
talking.
for questions. We need information,
we'll
correct?
take about a 5-minute break, I think, while we move ourselves over to that table.
And are
so-
we done with the TV for tonight?
We are done with the TV for tonight, but we will adjourn after we discuss the Broadway.
Have to adjourn? Eileen, don't we have to adjourn?
Not until after we finish the discussion on the Broadway
Mike, it's not
reconstruction.
even snowing.
Yeah, I know, but I'll bet you won't be out here by 11 o'clock.
We're not gonna be on.
Force me with you.
Here's the correction, if you just sort of make it easier for me to just copy it.
Coming up in April, right?
I think it was Jane taking the notes.
I didn't tell you Dunkin' Donuts is on board.
No, I don't need
I think the general manager is on board. He's gonna talk to his regional manager as well, but. I do not. Either you guys talk to fraternity about.
I've had them attend other meetings in the past.
Service badge or whatever they call it.
I was approached
So
about.
I wasn't aware of that, Marilyn. I get the list of, people that need to be appointed, and I thought that,
I was approached by the fraternity, so I.
All right, what date?
from City Hall. And, it's only, it's,
February, March 7th. Oh, I have a poker game at 7. Concert at...
You can still buy a ticket.
Okay, I'll buy the ticket, but I can't make it.
Okay, that's fine. And the other.
Just wants to sell the ticket.
Exactly.